When choosing assets to invest in, it can be difficult to see the wood from the trees. Because if you look on the CoinMarketCap homepage, there are over 10,000 coins to choose from. So then the question is, where do you even start to narrow down the list and find your path to profit? Well, I like to use the Capital Flow Index tool from MDX ALGO, which is this tool here where you can compare your large caps like Bitcoin, your altcoins, your meme coins and stable coins, or you can drill down to the next level and look at sectors like AI, gaming, metaverse, smart contracts, and so on. It also has functionality for TradFi. So if you want to compare stocks like your Mag 7, or Tesla versus the S&P or Dow, you can look at the currencies like euros, dollars, pounds, or you can even look at commodities like metals, oil, corn, and so on. So yeah, this is a great tool for drilling down into those sectors and trying to optimize your portfolio strategy. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's dive into the tool. So the clue to how this works is in the name, Capital Flow Index. So it's literally the flow of capital or money moving in between different sectors, whether that's crypto or TradFi. And this is useful because it can help you to think about changing your allocation of assets in your portfolio to catch whichever is the next asset class or sector which is going to be pumping next to get those better profits. So if we jump into the chart, then the default view will show you these different colored lines which represent that capital flow into the different categories. But there is a little bit more to this tool. So it does have those different modes, including the other subsectors and TradFi presets. And in terms of what to use this for, well, there are different ways. You can look for outliers on the chart to catch up, or sometimes you may want to follow the trend the line is going. You can also think about different correlations between the assets, and it can also just help to narrow down the choices. But there's also three different modes: price mode, on balance volume, and volatility. And you also have to understand what the flow score does, which is showing a relative strength of the rate of change of those things. So to make sense of all of this, I'm going to give a very simple example on the whiteboard to help you understand the calculation logic that powers the tool underneath. And then when we apply this for finding our trade setups, you'll find this much more effective. If you would just like to start using the tool, then feel free to skip ahead with the chapters below. If you would like to understand more what drives the indicator, I've got this nice example for you. So let's imagine we have two drivers. First, we have Yummy Mummy Susie driving her Land Rover SUV. Now, let's say that she has to drive a distance of 30 miles and it takes her a time of 1 hour. And let's assume Susie likes to be slow and steady and drive at a fixed speed. Well, if it's a distance of 30 miles and it takes 1 hour, that means her speed would be 30 miles per hour, which is this fixed constant line of speed. And then if we thought about her acceleration, then this is the change in speed in the time taken. Well, given the speed is fixed, there is no acceleration. She's neither speeding up nor slowing down. So the acceleration line is literally 0. Now, let's take Larry Lambo, who likes to give it the beans and really drive the car aggressively. Well, if we plotted his journey, let's say he starts off at 30 miles an hour, but then gradually increases the speed through the journey. Well, the distance traveled would start off looking the same as Susie, but then as he starts to speed up, he would cover more distance in the same amount of time, kind of roughly like that. So the distance curve would actually curve up like that. Now, if you plotted the speed, let's assume he's increasing his pace in the Lambo at a constant speed. So the speed line, let's say he starts at 30 miles an hour, would go up in a straight line like that. And let's say he hits a speed at 70 miles per hour, which is the legal limit in the UK. Then the speed line would be constant, linear like that. However, the acceleration would look different because he's accelerating at a constant rate. So the change in speed over the time taken would actually be a horizontal line like that. And let's just imagine that he's speeding up by, say, 5 miles per hour every few minutes. So quite quickly, you can see the difference in the rate of change of the thing we're talking about, which is the key point. But in real life, no one would drive at a fixed 30 or speed up at a perfectly constant amount. In a more realistic scenario, the speed may kind of go up for a while, be a bit constant, then come back down, slow right down, and then start speeding up aggressively, like that. Starting to look familiar? Well, if we now plot the rate of change of this scenario, instead of just a constant line, the acceleration, well, in that section there, it would be going up, then it goes kind of flat. Now we start decelerating towards the bottom, hit down there, and then it switches back to re-acceleration like that. And this is starting to look more similar to the capital flow index line. So now let's move on to see how that works. Now we can apply that rate of change concept to understand what the flow line is showing us on the tool. So here we have our 4 assets: meme coins, large caps, alts, and stable coins. And I've plotted them on a +100 to -100 scale with the 0 line in the middle. And where the line moves on this scale corresponds to the rate of change of the thing we're looking at. So if the tool is in price mode and we're looking at the large cap flow line, when it's moving up like that, it means the rate of change of price of that asset is positive. And then when it goes down, the rate of change is negative, and so on like that. And then if we start plotting on the other assets, let's say when large caps are going up, meme coins are going down. And then when this hits the bottom, it swaps round, and then the meme coins start going up. And so on for the other assets, like the altcoins, like this, and then the stable coins, like that. Right? So quite quickly, you can see how we can compare the rate of change of, let's say, price based on the flow score for each asset visually represented on this scale. And that's how the capital index flow line works. Now that you understand the calculation logic behind this indicator, let's jump back into the charts and I'll show you how to interpret the signals from this tool so that you can really find those hidden alt-gem picks based on the data and the technicals, not just based on what some random influencer is telling you in the middle of a forest. The first topic is timeframes, and generally I find with this tool it works best on the 4-hour or daily time frame. You can experiment, but you may find on the lower time frames it does have a bit too much noise. Next, one of the settings in the tool is the smoothing option, which will change how the line looks either in kind of these step fashion or a smoothed kind of oscillator line. So here, when I'm in the kind of default mode, I prefer the step lines because when you come to key swing points in the assets, sometimes it can help you. So like here, for example, you see how Bitcoin has come down and hit those lows around 50,000, and that corresponded with the large caps hitting the low of the rate of change down there. Then it had a bounce. We got an up candle on the daily, and then it came back down again here on the next daily candle on the 7th of August. But down here on the step line, you can see it's making a lower high on that flow line. So that can help you to identify divergences or that higher low on this swing point and get into that long. But if you were in one of the other modes, say the crypto subsectors, you'll find there are a lot more assets that it's comparing. And here, it can look kind of a bit noisy. So if you increase the smoothing in the menu here to say 2 or maybe even 3, you'll see it's a little bit easier to discern the difference between all these lines, especially when you zoom in a bit. So you may find that setting helpful. The next setting is to help you turn on or off different assets. And you do that with this show asset number option, which I like to use to remove the stablecoins line, because we can see that in a more advanced way on one of the other indicators. So you'll find this option towards the bottom of the menu down here. So it's already checked show asset number, and that corresponds to these small numbers in brackets. So that will show you which asset in the style tab you may want to turn on or off. So for example, for asset 12, which is corresponding to stablecoins, if you tick that, you can remove it. And the reason I do that is because I prefer the stablecoin demand tool from the crypto on-chain bundle. And I made a video about that, which should be popping up somewhere here. And I find this is a much more advanced tool to see those flows in the retail stablecoin demand. And the other advantage of doing that is it makes this view a little bit less noisy, because now you're only looking at the large caps, the altcoins, and the memes. The next component is the table, which gives you the actual flow score number and the correlation figure. And the correlation will be comparing to whichever is the major market baseline. So in crypto mode, it will compare each asset to the total market cap, whereas in equities mode, it would compare to the S&P 500. And that feature is this table over here on the right-hand side. It's got all the live flow scores there and all the correlations. And this is useful as well because you can see there that the large caps, well, that's going to have a high correlation to the total market cap, whereas let's say the altcoins at the moment have got quite low correlation. So what that means is when Bitcoin and Ethereum and the bigger coins are rallying, altcoins aren't really responding. In fact, if anything, they're going down slightly. And these numbers update in real time, so it gives you that idea of how the different coins are responding. For my first guest on the show, I have Will from MDX ALGO, who shares his insights on how to interpret that flow line in the indicator to manage your altcoin portfolio. Starting with price mode, which can help to watch the flow and see when one asset is topping out and money is flowing into the other categories, which can help when to take profits or jump into the next asset.
The coolest thing about this is seeing the flow from large caps, altcoins, and shitcoins, and you can really start to see where something might top out. Let's just go on to the 4-hour. And you can then see the capital flow into the other sort of regions. So just give me a second. So, I mean, let's just find an area where it happens. So yeah, you can immediately see here that basically altcoins in general have pumped along with Bitcoin here as Bitcoin's slowly starting to dump here and people are going more into Tether. You can also see altcoins are pushing up here. So depending on what you're in, obviously you want to check the index and see all the coins that are in there, but you can then see that essentially the transfer of money from here to here is basically, it's inversely correlated. So you can then, it's really good to get that extra like partial cycle out of an altcoin cycle. Whereas I think a lot of people, they sit in something and, you know, we're all guilty of it. And it pumps and then you sort of sit in it for a little bit longer, it goes sideways. Meanwhile, a whole other sector goes crazy. And sometimes you miss out on gains there. And also there's, you know, on the other hand, sometimes you can overtrade it. And sometimes I have pulled my money out of something thinking, oh, this is topped. And then it goes mental. And then the other thing that I've bought goes sideways. So you're never going to win them all. However, this does give you a good idea of what has pumped generally first with everything else. And you can kind of see in dips here, if we were to have a little look, you can see that generally blue and yellow are going to meet in the dip, which we can see here, okay, which is going to be stable coins and altcoins. And then you can see essentially, look, then the money flows out of everything that's already pumped, right? Which is going to be green and red, which is the same here, green and red, right? Which for those that don't know is obviously going to be large caps and shitcoins. And you can just play that oscillation basically. So if you're in altcoins, you can play the oscillation from this to this. And I find really in almost all points of the chart, these are going to be kind of paired together. So as you can see on every single dip, you kind of get the same reaction here as money flows from these into these, out of this into this. And that's basically how I use this.
Will also shows how to use the volume and volatility modes, where big spikes in that flow score tend to mark trend changes.
Volume and volatility is really interesting as well. Let me go back to something like Solana. You can kind of see what's happening volatility wise. Generally speaking, I just go for the highest imprint on here. So for instance, if I'm using Solana, clearly this is the highest volatility event, right? And you can see that yellow and blue are spiking. So that's what I kind of like to use as my general gist of things. Now, again, similar to an RSI, generally every time you see just say that this coin is yellow, every time you see yellow peak now, it tends to be a change of direction in the markets, which is very interesting. And it also tends to be better to the top side than the bottom side. As you can see here, we do have some smaller peaks in these regions, but they're just not as, right here, there isn't that much of an event. I guess it goes down to here, but I find that the top peaks are very, very good for sniping tops and bottoms, really. When it goes to a low volatility event, it doesn't mean that much. It can mean pump or dump. But generally speaking, these are always trend shifts. And you can see here, look, trend shift, trend shift, trend shift. So pretty much every single time it's done that, it has had some sort of trend shift. It doesn't mean that it's a major one. It could just be a minor one, and we are on the 4 hour, so it's going to be a little bit choppy sometimes. But I think that's a really good point to look at. But again, you can just trade the ebbs and flows here, and you can see that essentially when you're on volatility mode, once again, in times of massive high volatility, you're going to see things peak, and it's again going to signify bottoms and tops. Very, very similar to volume, really. So yeah, I mean, don't overthink it. I don't think it's a intensely sort of complex indicator that we have. It's actually quite simple.
Will also has some good suggestions on how to move down from the sector level analysis to actually choosing the coins and tokens you might buy or sell, and generally how to approach trading them. And I've summarized these key points here for you to refer back to, but I'll let Will explain with some live examples on the chart.
Crypto subsectors is the next one that I absolutely love, and you have to go on price to that. It's a nice overall view, yeah, absolutely, as to sort of what's happening in the markets. But again, with a lot of these things, you have to really find your edge with them, because you can always say two different things. You can say, okay, well, exchange coins are currently in the lead, right? And the lead can, coins can stay in the lead for a while. And you can see here, exchange coins were leading for all of that day, right? And, this is just an example on the 4 hour, but if you go to say the daily or the weekly time frame, you can have a leader for a significant amount of time. And really, it's up to you to figure out what kind of coin it is. And does it, like, for instance, Solana, once it gets going, it just continues to rip, right? And you have certain coins that are very cyclical, and certain coins that once they get going, like AVAX, Solana, etc., they just absolutely go for it. So the question is it better for you actually to exit the leader and put it into one of the laggards, shall we say? Or is it best to stay into the leaders? And I think that's, it's still something that I work on and I don't always get right. But it's certainly speaking, once you have a couple of tops on one of these, generally speaking, it's going to come back down and money will flow out of it. So for me, I tend to kind of wait for a lower high on this, on whatever I'm in, to then swap and change things around. And once again, you don't have to. But again, for instance, like AI data and all of these ones here, exchange tokens, I wouldn't say this is completely topped yet. I'd say generally speaking, if you look, it takes a little bit more time to kind of start topping out. And obviously also pay attention to the chart, that you're actually trading as well. So if the token doesn't look topped, then obviously don't get out of it. But this is just an extra thing on top of, whatever price chart you're looking at or whatever token you're trading, to give you a little bit more information as to, is money starting to flow out of the sectors that I'm in? But again, it's a tool that I use once in a while. It's not something, as in this mode of the tool, it's not something I'm looking at right now, because again, altcoins aren't going crazy. But during the absolute peak mania phases, this can be absolutely incredible. And you can just, we all know, like sometimes you get those crazy rotations. I remember the 2000 or last bull run, shall we say, essentially, we had some crazy rotations from like Solana down to like AVAX and various other things, and then it would cycle all the way through those ecosystems, and all the shit coins, all the SAM coins especially, would just pump one after the other, and in very tight cycles. They'd pump in like a few days or a day, money would flow out, go into the next thing. And so this, again, is very, very useful to kind of see when a sector is done and another sector is kind of absorbing the cash flow. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty much how I use this.
And then just one question on that mode. How would you go from, let's say, the category DEXs to then drill down to look for the tokens you might be interested in, especially if you weren't so experienced?
It's a very good question. You wouldn't use this. This is really just to find the categories, but I just go and I have, a watch list full of each one of these. I just look at what looks the best in my watch list, or what looks the toppiest in my watch list, right?
For people who may be quite new to altcoins, because this could be a good starting point, kind of narrow down your sector, then go to coin market cap, look into that sector and narrow it down into the top few coins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do quite a bit of that. I think I'm missing this step out from the explanation because I've already sort of done that already. I found things from CoinMarketCap and they're now on my watch list.
Lastly, Will has a great pro tip on how to manage all of this in TradingView and actually keep track of all those coins so you can stay on top of the ones that are pumping and the ones that are dumping.
And then you can use a little watch list trick. What you do is you'd categorize things into, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go what I've done: urgent, buy, watch closely, potential, unsorted. And again, this is potentially overkill for a lot of people. But one of the things that I like to do is to come into whatever exchange sort of that I'm using. So let's just go on and say Binance, and then you can go into type. You can go down to spot or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Delete this from the search, and then you can come down here, find a color that you're not using. So let's just say light blue for now. And you come down, you tick all the tickers that you want, right? And obviously that's going to add that to the blue watch list. Then from there, you can then come into here, you can go to your cyan list or blue list, right? And then what you can do once your watch list is full is click make a copy. So just say test. So now once you have this, you can come in and you can then make all of these categories, etc. within here. I won't do that just to save time, but essentially you can come into here with it already done. And then you can, I'm not actively using this one right now because altcoins aren't moving, but when they do move, what I do is I move things from, urgent buy down to watch closely, or up from, potential to watch closely up to urgent buy. And the way I do that is by simply categorizing them as green or red. And let's just say we have, a couple of random ones like this. Well, then what you can do is you can sort them like this. So then all the green ones would move up, right? Obviously, this is the top category, so you're not moving up. But then all the red ones would actually move down. So then you can drag this down to your watch closely category, and then you can drag this one up to this one if you need. So this is just a really good way, to manage all of your alts and manage the things that need to get bought in different ways. And this also can, you can almost use the asset flow index as a director of this, to find, okay, so this is the category I should be looking at right now. Okay, cool. What are the coins in that category? You make a watch list of those coins, or add them to your watch list in a section. And then, you can even divide it up into each section. You could have this one just being AI, right? You could have this being AI coins. You could have this being DeFi, etc., right? And then what you can do from there is just use the colors to identify what's good to buy. So, green could be nearly ready. Blue could be, not quite there. Red is it looks fucking horrible, etc., etc. So there's a multitude of ways you can use this, but I think this is the best way to keep track of things. And if you're really serious about doing altcoin flips, it's very helpful.
If you would like to try the Capital Flow Index tool, then click on my link down below in the video description, and it will take you over to the MDX ALGO website, where if you sign up with my link, you get a nice 30% discount. And also you can try 9 other really useful tools. So I'd love to hear what you think about that if you try it down in the comments, and whether this actually helps you with your altcoin or trading in other sectors in TradFi. So let's crack on. Other features to be aware of: when you're loading the multi-sector presets, it will automatically load spot trading pairs by default, which are based on a hand-picked list of assets. And those are not related to the trading pair you may currently have loaded on your chart in TradingView. Also, if you're looking at the TradFi assets, like say equities, then you may notice a flat line on the indicator, which represents times when those markets are closed. And lastly, there are some quite useful alerts features, which we'll take a look at. So here is the equities mode, and I'm on the hourly chart. So now you can see those flat lines when the markets are closed. And then in terms of the alert feature, this is not actually in the menu here. You need to go into the side panel on TradingView, click to add a new alert, and then here it has various options where you can set an alert when any of these assets cross each other or enter the top or the bottom channel. So yeah, play around with that, which can be quite useful. For my next guest, I welcome back onto the show Crypto Viking, who shares a really useful acronym to keep in mind when you're trying to do your asset rotations or asset waterfall, particularly when that altcoin season really gets going.
Yeah, so basically the asset rotation on the highest time frame when you're thinking about markets and how they work in crypto. Traditionally, you'll get Bitcoin moving first. So price starts moving with Bitcoin, and then eventually ETH and alts will start moving as well. Obviously not every single one together, but if Bitcoin's moving up very strong, commanding amount, a large portion of the dominance, or in this case, the asset flow, I want to look then at potentially ETH and alts to potentially catch a move after Bitcoin's on the move. Like Bitcoin does a big leg up and starts to range and stabilize. Then we look at ETH and alts to continue that move. And then as that rotation gets smaller and smaller and people are trying to extract the maximum potential upside, you also look at micro caps or shitcoins. And then eventually, as the market starts to like break down and roll over, you rotate back into stable coins as everything nukes, and then it eventually goes back to Bitcoin to start it. And that's generally the way it works. And then especially on the higher time frame, like you'll see a perfect example is last bull cycle, 2021. Once we were doing the 60 plus K peaks in the early part of 2021, what did we see that happened as soon as Bitcoin actually broke down? Well, we saw the biggest altcoin run in history because that was part of the capital rotation. Obviously, other factors, retail had access to a lot of funds, liquidity was being pumped in the markets, printers were going full blast. But yeah, in general, that's the rotation I think about. And so same thing here on like the 1 hour, right? Altcoins are still doing bad and poorly. They're not doing great. But what would you want to see then for altcoins to do well? Well, Bitcoin price coming up, maybe stabilizing for a little bit, and then altcoins potentially running to the upside as well until there's a correction and then a continuation. Who knows? But that's the way I look at thinking about the rotation as like what the typical crypto asset rotation is. And then when I look at the capital flow, it's okay, well, shitcoins and Bitcoin are bottomed, and then all of a sudden we run flat. Bitcoin price goes nowhere because it's start of the week. We already did the little Sunday nuke, open the markets up, and all of a sudden, shitcoins are just full sending in sideways price action. So that's like a way to maximize it, where it's like we're in a nasty, crabby range that was Sunday through midday Monday before we got the crazy volatility. And what happened with shitcoins? Full send. In comparison. Altcoins, full send in comparison.
Next, Crypto Viking shows how to switch from the auto-loaded presets in the tool into manual mode so that you can analyze those tokens and coins that you're particularly interested in.
Right. You'll see that here it's following very closely to Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin starts to break down a little bit, holds some structure, and then all of a sudden, but Sol's actually moving pretty hard up in this area. So it looks at it in the terms of rotation, where we've got the asset flow for Bitcoin starting to come down based off of strength and not so much on price. It's already breaking. Sol's already breaking down as well. So again, if Bitcoin does start to lose, say, the daily open again, this thing should start down, Sol should go down. And then if this thing finally finds a local bottom, look at Sol to potentially break first, since it seems to move up and down before Bitcoin does.
Something to note when in manual mode, you can load up to 32 totally different assets. However, the way the correlation score works is if all the assets are in a similar sector, say equities, then it will compare the correlations to the market cap for that sector. But if you choose completely unrelated things like, say, euros, dollars, some oil, gold, and say a crypto coin, then because they're all unrelated, the correlation would not be meaningful. So it just defaults back to comparing to the crypto total market cap. Viking also gives some good examples when using equities mode, so you can compare the single stocks to what's happening on the index to either determine a general trend or identify outliers that may catch up.
Here, what do we have on the first thing opening up? Everything's trending up. So within the first hour, heck, you can even go on the 15-minute. And it's like, what's the general direction we're expecting the market to travel in today on the first 15-minute close, as an example. So here we see AMC, GameStop, all these things nuking off a cliff, but then we've got all these, we got the Mag 7 and stuff all full sending. So you could basically look at this as like, okay, what's not performing in an upside move? If the S&P 500 is moving to the upside, and the Dow's holding steady, it's not full dumping. It doesn't really matter about the Dow, but if the S&P is full sending and the NQ is full sending, obviously I'm going to look at stocks that are starting to trend up within the first 15 minutes. So even here, okay, markets are open, right? And already, because pre-market 30 minutes before. So by the time this candle happens, we've already got data coming in, and it's already telling you which direction price is traveling.
And lastly, the other two modes for commodities and foreign exchange pretty much work in exactly the same way. We're just using this as a screener to try and find those outliers or assets which may be starting a new trend. So this top half is looking at the commodities such as the metals, and here look, there's the gold, which the yellow line has been bottoming out, and then it kind of started pumping here and had a nice strong move up over the last few days. So you may have shifted from, say, if you were in, uranium and palladium, may have reallocated your portfolio towards gold. And similarly, down the bottom here, we have all the different currencies, and these move in the similar way. So towards the end of last week, we saw the dollar, dumping hard, while the sterling was having a nice bounce. So ultimately, it's as simple as that. This is a great tool, and I think it's better than the alternatives. You can look at something like crypto bubbles, which looks kind of fancy, but it doesn't really give you anything actionable in terms of trying to find a trade setup. Whereas the capital flow index tool, it takes a bit of getting used to, but what's nice about this is you can load it on your TradingView chart. You can do your own, analysis, all your trend lines and TPOs or whatever you like to look at in TradingView, right alongside this kind of sector level analysis. And then you can drill down further and look at, the large caps versus altcoins versus memes. And I just find I really like this because it gives me lots and lots of ideas, and it saves me hours as well, rather than trying to pick and choose through thousands and thousands of coins. So there you are. I hope you like that. And that's all I've got to say. So that's it from me on the Capital Flow Index tool. I hope you've gotten value out of this episode, and it genuinely helps you with your altcoin portfolio or trading those TradFi subsectors in commodities, stocks, currencies. If you would like to learn more, then click on the subscribe button and notification bell down there, because next week I'll be doing a deep dive into the volume delta tool from MDX ALGO, which can help you with your order flow understanding for your trading. So definitely check that out. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. I'm going to go and explore this forest a bit more and try and find some more hidden gems. So I'll catch you later.